Foreword to Woman as Decoration. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Julie Vermeulen. Woman as Decoration by Emily Burbank. Foreword. Woman as Decoration is intended as a sequel to The Art of Interior Decoration, Grace Wood and Emily Burbank. Having assisted in setting the stage for woman, the next logical step is the consideration of woman herself as an important factor in the decorative scheme of any setting, the vital spark to animate all interior decoration, private or public. The book in hand is intended as a brief guide for the woman who would understand her own type, make the most of it, and know how simple a matter it is to be decorative if she will but master the few rules underlying all successful dressing. As the costuming of woman is an art, the history of that art must be known, to a certain extent, by one who would be an intelligent student of our subject. With the assistance of 33 illustrations to throw light upon the text, we have tried to tell the beguiling story of decorative woman as she appears in frescoes and bas-reliefs of ancient Egypt, on Greek vases, the Gothic woman on tapestry and stained glass, woman in painting, stucco, and tapestry of the Renaissance, 17th, 18th, and 19th century woman in portraits. Contemporary woman's costume is considered, not as fashion, but as decorative line and color, a distinct contribution to the interior decoration of her own home or other setting. In this department, woman is giving suggestions as to the costuming of herself, beautifully and appropriately, in the ballroom, at the opera, in her boudoir, sunroom, or on her shaded porch, in her garden, when driving her own car, by the sea, or on the ice. Woman as decoration has been planned, in part, also to fill a need very generally expressed for a handbook to serve as guide for beginners in getting up costumes for fancy dress balls, amateur theatricals, or the professional stage. We have tried to shed light upon period costumes and point out ways of making any costume effective. Costume books abound, but so far as we know, this is a first attempt to confine the vast and perplexing subject within the dimensions of a small, accessible volume devoted to the principles underlying the planning of all costumes regardless of period. The author does not advocate the preening of her feathers as woman's sole occupation in any age, much less at this crisis in the making of world history, but she does lay great emphasis on the fact that a woman owes it to herself, her family, and the public in general, to be as decorative in any setting as her knowledge of the art of dressing admits. This knowledge implies an understanding of line, color, fitness, background, and, above all, one's own type. To know one's type and to have some knowledge of the principle underlying all good dressing is of serious economic value. It means a saving of time, vitality, and money. The watchword of today is efficiency, and the keynote to modern costuming, appropriateness. And so the spirit of the time records itself in the interesting and charming subdivision of woman's attire. One may follow woman decorative in the Orient vase, fan, screen, and kakemono, as she struts in the stiff manner of Egyptian bas-reliefs across walls of ancient ruins, or sits in angular serenity, gazing into the future through the narrow slits of Egyptian eyes, oblivious of time. Woman beautiful in the European sense, and decorative to the superlative degree, on Greek vase and sculptured wall. Here in rhythmic curves she dandles lovely Cupid on her toe, serves as Vestal Virgin at a woodland shrine, wears the bronze helmet of Minerva, makes laws, or as Penelope, the wife, rarely awaits her roving lord. She moves in august majesty, a sword-tried queen, and leaps in merry laughter as a carefree slave, pipes, sings, and plies the distaff. sauntering on down through Gothic Europe, Tudor England, the adolescent Renaissance, Bourbon France, into the picturesque changes of the 18th century, we ask, can one possibly escape our theme, woman as decoration? No, for she is carved in wood and stone, as Mother of God and Queen of Heaven gleams in the jewelled windows of the church, looks down in placid serenity on lighted altar, is woven in tapestry, in fact, dominates all art, painting, stucco, or marble throughout the ages. If one would know the story of woman's evolution and retrogression, that rising and falling tide in civilization, we commend a study of her as she is presented in art. A knowledge of a costume frequently throws light upon her age. A thorough knowledge of her age will throw light upon a costume. A study of the essentials of any costume of any period trains the eye and mind to be expert in planning costumes for everyday use. One learns quickly to discriminate between details which are ornaments because they have meaning and those which are only illiterate superfluities, and one learns to master many other points. It is not within the province of this book to dwell at length upon national costume, but rather to follow costume as it developed with and reflected caste, after human society ceased to be all alike as to occupation, diversion, and interest. In the world of caste, costume has gradually evolved until it aims through appropriateness at assisting woman to fulfill her role. With peasants who know only the traditional costume of their province, the task must often be done in spite of the costume, which is picturesque or grotesque, inconvenient, even impossible, but long made linger to divert the eye. Russia, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, Poland, Scandinavia, all have an endless variety of costumes, rich in souvenirs of folk history, rainbows of colours and bizarre in line, but it is costuming, the woman of fashion, which claims our attention. The succeeding chapters will treat of woman, the vital spark which gives meaning to any setting, indoors, out of doors, at the opera, in the ballroom, on the ice, where you will. Each chapter has to do with modern woman, and the historical paragraphs are given primarily to shed light upon her costume. It is shown that woman's decorative appearance affects her psychology, and that woman's psychology affects her decorative appearance. Some chapters may at first glance seem irrelevant, but those who have seriously studied any art and then undertaken to tell its story briefly in simple direct language, with the hope of quickly putting audience or reader in touch with the vital links in the chain of evidence, will understand the author's claim that no detour which illustrates the subject can in justice be termed irrelevant. In the detours often lie invaluable data for one with a mind for research, whether author or reader. This is especially true in connection with our present task, which involves unravelling some of the threads from the tangled skein of religion, dancing, music, sculpture, and painting, that mass of bright and sombre colour, of gold and silver threads, strung with pearls and glittering gems strangely broken by age, which tells the epic lyric tale of civilization. While we state that it is not our aim to make a point of fashion as such, some of our illustrations show contemporary woman as she appears in our homes, on our streets, at the play, in her garden, etc. We have taken examples of woman's costumes which are preeminently characteristic of the moment in which we write, and as we believe illustrate those laws upon which we base our deductions concerning woman as decoration. These laws are appropriateness of a costume to the occasion, consideration of the type of wearer, background against which costume is to be worn, and all decoration, which includes jewels as detail, with raison d'être. The body should be carried with form, in the sporting sense, to assist in giving line to the costume. The chic woman is one who understands the art of elimination in costumes. Wear your costumes with conviction, by which we mean decide what picture you will make of yourself, make it, and then enjoy it. It is only by letting your personality animate your costume that you make yourself superior to the lay figure or the sawdust doll. End of foreword.
Woman as Decoration. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Woman as Decoration by Emily Burbank. Chapter 1. A few hints for the novice who would plan her costumes. There are a few rules with regard to the costuming of woman which, if understood, put one a long way on the road toward that desirable goal, decorativeness, and have economic value as well. They are simple rules deduced by those who have made a study of woman's lines and coloring, and how to emphasize or modify them by dress. Temperaments are seriously considered by experts in this art, for the carriage of a woman and her manner of wearing her clothes depends in part upon her temperament. Some women instinctively feel line and are graceful in consequence, as we have said, but where one is not born with this instinct, it is possible to become so thoroughly schooled in the technique of controlling the physique, poise of the body, carriage of the head, movement of the limbs, use of feet and hands, that a sense of line is acquired. Study portraits by great masters, the movements of those on the stage, the carriage and positions natural to graceful women. A graceful woman is invariably a woman highly sensitized, but remember that alive to the finger tips, or toe tips, may be true of the woman with few gestures, a quiet voice and measured words, as well as the intensely active type. The highly sensitized woman is the one who will wear her clothes with individuality, whether she be rounded or slender. To dress well is an art and requires concentration as any other art does. You know the old story of the boy who, when asked why his necktie was always more neatly tied than those of his companions, answered, "I put my whole mind on it." There you have it. The woman who puts her whole mind on the costuming of herself is naturally going to look better than the woman who does not, and having carefully studied her type, she will know her strong points and her weak ones, and by accentuating the former, draw attention from the latter. There is a great difference, however, between concentrating on dress until an effect is achieved, and then turning the mind to other subjects, and that tiresome dawdling, indefinite, fruitless way to arrive at no convictions. This variety of woman never gets dress off her chest. The catechism of good dressing might be given in some such form as this. Are you fat? If so, never try to look thin by compressing your figure or confining your clothes in such a way as to clearly outline the figure. Take a chance from your size. Aim at long lines, and what dressmakers call an easy fit, and the use of solid colors. Stripes, checks, plaids, spots and figures of any kind draw attention to dimensions. A very fat woman looks larger if her surface is marked off into many spaces. Likewise a very thin woman looks thinner if her body on the imagination of the public, subtracting, is marked off into spaces absurdly few in number. A beautifully proportioned and rounded figure is the one to indulge in striped, checked, spotted or flowered materials, or any parti-colored costumes. Never try to make a thin woman look anything but thin. Often by accentuating her thinness, a woman can make an effect as type which gives her distinction. If she were foolish enough to try to look fatter, her lines would be lost without attaining the contour of the rounded type. There are, of course, fashions in types. Pale ash blondes, red-haired types, auburn or golden red with shell pink complexions, dark-haired types with pale white skin, etc., and fashions in figures are as many and as fleeting. Artists are sometimes responsible for these vogues. One hears of the Rubens type, or the Sir Joshua Reynolds, Hopner, Burne-Jones, Greuze, Henner, Zuloaga, and others. The artist selects the type and paints it. The attention of the public is attracted to it and thereafter singles it out. We may prefer soft, round blondes with dimpled smiles, but that does not mean that such indisputable loveliness can challenge the attractions of a slender serpentine tragedy queen, if the latter has established the vogue of her type through the medium of the stage or painter's brush. A woman well known in the world of fashion both sides of the Atlantic, slender and very tall, has at times deliberately increased that height with a small, high-crowned hat, surmounted by a still higher feather. She attained distinction without becoming a caricature, by reason of her obvious breeding and reserve. Here is an important point. A woman of quiet and what we call conservative type can afford to wear conspicuous clothes if she wishes, whereas a conspicuous type must be reserved in her dress. By following this rule, the overblown rose often makes herself beautiful. Study all types of woman. Beauty is a wonderful and precious thing, and not so fleeting either as one is told. The point is to take note, not of beauty's departure, but its gradually changing aspect, and adapt costume, line and color to the demands of each year's alterations in the individual. Make the most of gray hair. As you lose your color, soften your tones. Always star your points. If you happen to have an unusual amount of hair, make it count, even though the fashion be to wear but little. We recall the beautiful and unique Madame X of Paris, blessed by the gods with hair like bronze, heavy, long, silken and straight. She wore it wrapped about her head and finally coiled into a French twist on the top, the effect closely resembling an old Roman helmet. This was design, not chance, and her well-modelled features were the sort to stand the severe coiffure. Madame's husband, always at her side that season at Lake Luzerne, was curator of the Louvre. We often wondered whether the idea was his or hers. She invariably wore white, not a note of color, save her hair. Even her well-bred fox terrier was snowy white. Worth has given distinction to more than one woman by recognizing her possibilities, if kept to white, black, greys and mauves. A beautiful Englishwoman dressed by this establishment, always a marked figure at whatever embassy her husband happens to be posted, has never been seen wearing anything in the evening but black or white, with very simple lines, cut low and having a narrow train. It may take courage on the part of dressmaker as well as the woman in question, but granted you have a distinct style of your own and understand it, it is the part of wisdom to establish the habit of those lines and colors which are yours, and then to avoid experiments of outre lines and shades. They are almost sure to prove failures. Taking on a color and its variants is an economic as well as an artistic measure. Some women have so systematized their costuming in order to be decorative at the least possible expenditure of vitality and time. These are the women who dress to live, not live to dress. That they know at a glance if dress materials, hats, gloves, jewels, color of stones and style of setting are for them. It is really a joy to shop with this kind of woman. She has definitely fixed in her mind the colors and lines of her rooms, all her habitual settings, and the clothes and accessories best for her. And with the eye of an artist she passes swiftly by the most alluring bargains, calculated to undermine firm resolution. In fact, one should not say that this woman shops. She buys. What is more, she never wastes money, though she may spend it lavishly. Some of the best dressed women, by which we always mean women dressed fittingly for the occasion and with reference to their own particular types, are those with decidedly limited incomes. There are women who suggest chiffon and others brocade. Women who call for satin and others for silk. Women for sheer muslins and others for heavy linen weaves. Women for straight brims and others for those that droop. Women for leghorns and those they do not suit. Women for white furs and others for tawny shades. A woman with red in her hair is the one to wear red fox. If you cannot see for yourself what line and color do to you, surely you have some friend who can tell you. In any case, there is always the possibility of paying an expert for advice. Allow yourself to be guided in the reaching of some decision about yourself and your limitations, as well as possibilities. You will by this means increase your decorativeness, and what is of more serious importance, your economic value. A marked example of woman decorative was seen on the recent occasion when Miss Isadora Duncan danced at the Metropolitan Opera House for the benefit of French artists and their families, victims of the present war. Miss Duncan was herself so marvelous that afternoon as she poured her art, aglow and vibrant with genius, into the mold of one classic pose after another, that most of her audience had little interest in any other personality or effect. Some of us, however, when scanning the house between the acts, had our attention caught and held by a charmingly decorative woman occupying one of the boxes, a quaint outline in silver grey taffeta, exactly matching the shade of the woman's hair, which was cut in Florentine fashion, forming an aureole about her small head, a becoming frame for her fine, highly sensitive face. The deep red curtains and upholstery in the box threw her into relief, a lovely miniature as seen from a distance. There were no doubt other charming costumes in the boxes and stalls that afternoon, but none so successful in registering a distinct decorative effect. The one we refer to was suitable, becoming, individual, and reflected personality in a way to indicate an extraordinary sensitiveness to values, that subtle instinct which makes the artist. With very young women it is easy to be decorative under most conditions. Almost all of them are decorative, as seen in our present fashions, but to produce an effect in an opera box is to understand the carrying power of color and line. The woman in the opera box has the same problem to solve as the woman on the stage. Her costume must be effective at a distance. Such a costume may be white, black, or any color, gold, silver, steel, or jet, lace, chiffon, what you will, provided the fact be kept in mind that your outline be striking and the color an agreeable contrast against the lining of the box. Here outline is of chief importance. The silhouette must be definite. Hair, ornaments, fan, cut of gown, calculated to register against the background. In the stalls, color and outline of any single costume become a part of the mass of color and black and white of the audience. It is difficult to be a decorative factor under these conditions, yet we can all recall women of every age who so costumed themselves as to make an artistic, memorable impression, not only when entering opera, theatre, or concert hall, but when seated. These are the women who understand the value of elimination, restraint, color harmony, and that chic which results in part from faultless grooming. Today it is not enough to possess hair which curls ideally. It must, willy-nilly, curl conventionally. If it is necessary, prudent, or wise that your purchases for each season include not more than 6 new gowns, take the advice of an actress of international reputation who is famous for her good dressing in private life, and make a point of adding 1 new gown to each of the 6 departments of your wardrobe. Then have the cleverness to appear in these costumes whenever on view, making what you have fill in between times. To be clear, we would say, try always to begin a season with 1 distinguished evening gown, 1 smart tailor suit, 1 charming house gown, 1 tea gown, 1 negligee, and 1 sport suit. If you are needing many dancing frocks, which have hard wear, get a simple, becoming model, which your little dressmaker, seamstress, or maid can copy in inexpensive but becoming colors. You can do this in summer and winter alike, and with dancing frocks, tea gowns, negligees, and even sport suits. That is, if you have smart, up-to-date models to copy. One woman we know bought the finest quality jersey cloth by the yard, and had a little dressmaker copy exactly a very expensive skirt and sweater. It seems incredible, but she saved on a ready-made suit exactly like it $40, and on one made to measure by an exclusive house $100. Remember, however, that there was an artist back of it all, and some one had to pay for that perfect model to start with. In the case we cite, the woman had herself bought the original sport suit from an importer who is always in advance with Paris models. If you cannot buy the designs and workmanship of artists, take advantage of all opportunities to see them. Hats and gowns shown at openings, or when your richer friends are ordering. In this way you will get ideas to make use of, and you will avoid looking homemade, than which no more damning phrase can be applied to any costume. As a matter of fact, it implies a hat or gown lacking an artist's touch, and describes many a one turned out by long established and largely patronized firms. The only satisfactory copy of a Fortuny tea gown we have ever seen, accomplished away from the supervision of Fortuny himself, was the exquisite handwork of a young American woman who lives in New York, and makes her own gowns and hats, because her interest and talent happens to be in that direction. She told a group of friends the other day, to whom she was showing a dainty chiffon gown posed on a form, that to her the planning and making of a lovely costume had the same thrilling excitement that the painting of a picture had for the artist in the field of paint and canvas. This same young woman had worked constantly since the European war began, both in London and New York, on the shapeless surgical shirts used by the wounded soldiers. In this does she outrank her less accomplished sisters? Yes, for the technique she has achieved by making her own costumes makes her swift and economical, both in the cutting of her material and in the actual sewing, and she is invaluable as a buyer of materials. End of chapter 1.
Of Woman as Decoration. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Julie van William. Woman as Decoration by Emily Burbank. Chapter 2. The Laws Underlying All Costuming of Woman. That every costume is either right or wrong is not a matter of general knowledge. It will do, or it is near enough, are verdicts responsible for beauty hidden and interest destroyed. Who has not witnessed the mad mental confusion of women and men to decide upon costumes for some fancy dress ball, and the appalling ignorance displayed when, at the costumer's, they vaguely grope among battered-looking garments, accepting those proffered, not really knowing how the costume they ask for should look? Absurd mistakes in period costumes are to be taken more or less seriously, according to temperament. But where is a fair woman who will say that the failure to emerge from a dressmaker's hands in a successful costume is not a tragedy? Yet we know that the average woman, more often than not, stands stupefied before the infinite variety of materials and colours of our 20th century, and, unless guided by an expert, rarely presents the figure chez elle, when on view in public places, which she would or could, if in possession of the few rules underlying all successful dressing, whatever the century or circumstances. 6 salient points are to be borne in mind when planning a costume, whether for a fancy dress ball or to be worn as one goes about one's daily life. First, appropriateness to occasion, station, and age. Second, character of background you are to appear against, your setting. Third, what outline you wish to present to observers, the period of costume. Fourth, what materials of those in use during period selected you will choose. Fifth, what colours of those characteristic of period you will use. Sixth, the distinction between those details which are obvious contributions to the costume and those which are superfluous because meaningless or line-destroying. Let us remind our reader that a woman who dresses in perfect taste often spends far less money than she who has contracted the habit of indefiniteness as to what she wants, what she should want, and how to wear what she gets. Where one woman has used her mind and learned beyond all wavering what she can and what she cannot wear, thousands fill the streets by day and places of amusements by night, who blithely carry upon their persons costumes which hide their good points and accentuate their bad ones. The rara avis among women is she who always presents a fashionable outline, but so subtly adapted to her own type that the impression made is one of distinct individuality. One knows very well how little the average costume counts in a theatre, opera house, or ballroom. It is a question of background again. Also, you will observe that the costume which counts most individually is the one in a key higher or lower than the average, as with a voice in a crowded room. The chief contribution of our day to the art of making woman decorative is the quality of appropriateness. I refer, of course, to the woman who lives her life in the meshes of civilization. We have defined the smart woman as she who wears the costume best suited to each occasion when that occasion presents itself. Accepting this definition, we must all agree that beyond question the smartest women as a nation are English women, who are so fundamentally convinced as to the invincible law of appropriateness that from the cradle to the grave, with them evening means an evening gown, country clothes are suited to country uses, and a tea-gown is not bedroom negligee. Not even in Rome can they be prevailed upon to do as the Romans do. Apropos of this, we recall an experience in Scotland. A house party had gathered for the shooting, Englishmen and women. Among the guests were 2 Americans, done to a turn by Redfern. It really turned out to be a tragedy, as I saw it, for though their cloth skirts were short, they were silk-lined. Outing shirts were of crepe, not flannel. Tan boots, but thinly soled. Hats most chic, but the sort that drooped in the mist. Well, those 2 American girls had to choose between long days alone, while the rest tramped the moors, or to being togged out in broad tweeds, flannel shirts, and thick-soled boots. That was some years back. We are a match for England today in the open, but have a long way to go before we wear with equal conviction, and therefore easy grace, tea-gown and evening dress. Both how and when still annoy us as a nation. On the street we are supreme when tailleur. In carriage attire the French woman is supreme by reason of that innate Latin coquetry which makes her feel line and its significance. The ideal pose for any hat is a French secret. The average woman is partially aware that if she would be a decorative being, she must grasp conclusively 2 points. First, the limitations of a natural outline. Secondly, a knowledge of how nearly she can approach the outline demanded by fashion without appearing a caricature, which is another way of saying that each woman should learn to recognize her own type. The discussion of silhouette has become a popular theme. In fact, it would be difficult to find a maker of women's costume so remote and unread as not to have seized and embedded deep in a vocabulary that mystic word. To make our point clear, constant reference to the stage is necessary, for from stage effects we are one and all free to enjoy and learn. Nowhere else can the woman see so clearly presented the value of having what she wears harmonize with the room she wears it in, and the occasion for which it is worn. Not all plays depicting contemporary life are plays of social life, staged and costumed in a chic manner. What is taught by the modern stage, as shown by Baxt, Reinhardt, Barker, Urban, Jones, the Portmanteau Theatre, and Washington Square players, is values, as the artist uses the term, not fashions. The relative importance of background, outline, color, texture of material, and how to produce harmonious effects by the judicious combination of furnishing and costumes. Today, when we want to say that a costume or the interior decoration of a house is the last word in modern line and color, we are apt to call it à la Baxt, meaning of course Leon Baxt, whose American poster was the Russian ballet. If you have not done so already, buy or borrow the wonderful Baxt book, showing reproductions in their colors of his extraordinary drawings, the originals of which are owned by private individuals or museums in Paris, Petrograd, London, and New York. They are outrés to a degree, yet each one suggests the whole of parts of costumes for modern woman, adorable lines, unbelievable combinations of color, No wonder Poiret, the Paris dressmaker, seized upon Bakst as designer. Or was it Bakst who seized upon Poiret? Bakst got his inspiration in the Orient. As a bit of proof for your own satisfaction, there is a book entitled Six Monuments of Chinese Sculpture by Edward Chauvin, published in 1914 by G. Van Oost and Company of Brussels and Paris. The author, with a highly commendable desire to perpetuate for students a record of the most ancient specimens of Chinese sculpture, brought to Paris and sold there from time to art collectors from all over the world, selected 6 fine specimens as a theme of text and for illustrations. Plate 23 in this collection shows a woman whose costume in outline might have been taken from Bakst or even Vogue, but put it the other way round. The Vogue artist today, we use the word as a generic term, finds inspiration through museums and such works as the above. And this is particularly true as our little handbook goes into print, for the reason that the great war between the Central Powers and the Entente has to a certain extent checked the invention and material output of Europe, and driven designers of and dealers in costumes for women to China and Japan. Our great-great-grandmothers here in America wore Paris fashion shown on the important fashion dolls and made up in brocades from China by the colonial mantua makers, so we are but repeating history. Today, war, which means horror, ugliness, loss of ideals and illusions, holds most of the world in its grasp, and we find creative artists, apostles of the beautiful, seeking the Orient because it is remote from the great world struggle. We hear that Edmond Dulac, who has shown in a superlative manner woman decorative when illustrating the Arabian Nights and other well-known books, is planning a flight to the Orient. He says that he longs to bury himself far from carnage in the hope of wooing back his muse. If this subject of background, line and colour in relation to costuming of woman interests you, there are many ways of getting valuable points. One of them, as we have said, is to walk through galleries, looking at pictures only as decorations, that is, colour and line against the painter's background. Fashions change in dress, arrangement of hair, jewels, etc., but this does not affect values. It is la ligne, the grand gesture, or line fraught with meaning and balance and harmony of colour. The reader knows the colour scheme of her own rooms and the character of gown she is planning, and for suggestions as to interesting colour against colour she can have no higher authority than the experience of recognized painters. Some develop rapidly in this study of values. If your rooms are so-called period rooms, you need not of necessity dress in period costumes. But what is extremely important, if you would not spoil your period room, nor fail to be a decorative contribution when in it, is that you make a point of having the colour and texture of your house gowns in the same key as the hangings and upholstery of your room. Why, the safe in any room, black is at times too strong. It depends in part upon the size of your room. If it is small and in soft tones, delicate harmonizing shades will not obtrude themselves as black can, and so reduce the effect of space. This is the case not only with black, but with emerald green, decided shades of red, royal blue and purple or deep yellows. If artistic creations, these colors are all decorative in a room done in light tones, provided the room is large. A Louis XVI salon is far more beautiful if the costumes are kept in Louis XVI coloring, and all details, such as lace, jewelry, fans, etc., kept strictly within the picture, fine in design, delicate in coloring, workmanship and quality of material. Beyond these points, one may follow the outline demanded by the fashion of the moment, if desired. But remember that a beautiful, interesting room, furnished with works of art, demands a beautiful, interesting costume, if the woman in question would sustain the impression made by her rooms, to the arranging of which she has given thought, time, and vitality, to say nothing of financial outlay, she must take her own decorative appearance seriously. The writer has passed wonderful hours examining rare illuminated manuscripts of the Middle Ages, 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th centuries, missals, hours of the Virgin, and breviaries, for the sole purpose of studying women's costumes, their colour, line, and details, as depicted by the old artists. Gothic costumes in Gothic interiors, and early Renaissance costumes in Renaissance interiors. The art of moderns in various media has taken from these creations of medieval genius more than is generally realized. We were looking at a rare illuminated Gothic manuscript recently, from which William Morris drew inspirations and ideas for the books he made. It is a monumental achievement of the 12th century, a mass book, written and illuminated in Flanders, at one time in the possession of a Cistercian monastery, but now one of the treasures in the noted private collection made by the late J. Pierpont Morgan. The pages are of vellum, and the illuminations show the figures of saints in jewel-like colours on backgrounds of pure gold leaf. The binding of this book, sides of wood held together by heavy white vellum, hand-tooled with clasps of thin silver, is a work of Morris himself and very characteristic of his manner. He patterned his hand-made books after these great models, just as he worked years to duplicate some wonderful old piece of furniture, realizing so well the magic which lies in consecrated labor, that labor which takes no account of time nor pay, but is led on by the vision of perfection possessing the artist's soul. We know women who have copied the line, color, and material of costumes depicted in Gothic illuminations, that they might be in harmony with their own Gothic rooms. One woman familiar with this art has planned a frankly modern room, covering her walls with gold Japanese fibre, gilding her woodwork and doors, using the brilliant blues, purples, and greens of the old illuminations in her hangings, upholstery, and cushions, and as a striking contribution to the decorative scheme, costumes herself in white, some soft clinging materials such as crêpe de chine, Liberty satin, or chiffon velvet, which take the medieval lines in long folds. She wears a silver girdle formed of the handmade clasps of old religious books, and her rings, neck chains, and earrings are all of hand-wrought silver, with precious stones cut in the ancient way and irregularly set. This woman got her idea of the effectiveness of white against gold from an ancient missal in a famous private collection, which shows the saints all clad in marvellous white against gold leaf. Whistler House, at 2 Chain Road, London, had a room the dado and doors of which were done in gold, on which he and 2 of his pupils painted the scattered petals of white and pink chrysanthemums, possibly a Persian or Japanese effect, as Whistler learned that way, but one sees the same idea in an illumination of the early 16th century, Hours of the Virgin and Breviary, made for Eleanor of Portugal, Queen of John II. The decorations here are in the style of the Renaissance, not Gothic, and some think Memling had a hand in the work. The borders of the illumination, characteristic of the Bruges school, are gold leaf, on which is painted, in the most realistic way, an immense variety of single flowers, small roses, pansies, violets, daisies, etc., and among them butterflies and insects. This border surrounds the pictures which illustrate the text. Always the marvellous colour, the astounding skill in laying it onto the vellum pages, an unforgettable lesson in the possibility of colour applied effectively to costumes when background is kept in mind. This breviary was bound in green velvet and clasped with hand-wrought silver for Cardinal Rodrigue de Castro, 1520 to 1600, of Spain. It is now in the private collection of Mr. Morgan. The cover alone gives one great emotion, genuine ancient velvet of the 16th century, to imitate which taxes the ingenuity of the most skilful of modern manufacturers. End of chapter 2.
Of woman as decoration. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Woman as Decoration by Emily Burbank. Chapter 3. How to Dress Your Type. A few points applying to all costumes. Needless to say, when considering women's costumes for ordinary use in their relation to background, unless some chameleon-like material be invented to take on the color of any background, one must be content with the consideration of one's own rooms, porches, garden, opera box, or automobile, etc. For a gown to be worn when away from home, when lunching, at receptions or dinners, the first consideration must be becomingness, a careful selection of line and color that bring out the individuality of the wearer. When away from one's own setting, personality is one of the chief assets of every woman. Remember, individuality is nature's gift to each human being. Some are more markedly different than others, but we have all seen a so-called colorless woman transformed into surprising loveliness when dressed by an artist's instinct. A delicate type of blonde with fair hair, quiet eyes, and faint shell pink complexion can be snuffed out by two strong colors. Remember that your ethereal blonde is invariably at her best in white, black, never white and black in combination unless black with soft white collars and frills, and delicate pastel shades. The richly toned brunette comes into her own in reds, yellows, and low tones of strong blue. Colorless jewels should adorn your perfect blonde, colorful gems your glowing brunette. What of those betwixt and between? In such cases, let complexion and color of eyes act as guide in the choice of colors. One is familiar with various trite rules such as match the eyes, carry out the general scheme of your coloring, by which is meant, if you are a yellow blonde, go in for yellows. If your hair is ash brown, your eyes but a shade deeper, and your skin inclined to be lifeless in tone, wear beaver browns and content yourself with making a record in harmony with no contrasting note. Just here let us say that the woman in question must at the very outset decide whether she would look pretty or chic, sacrificing the one for the other, or if she insists upon both, carefully arrange a compromise. As, for example, combine a semi-picture hat with a semi-tailored dress. The strictly chic woman of our day goes in for appropriateness. The lines of the latest fashion, but adapted to bring out her own best points, while concealing her bad ones, and an insistence upon a color and a shade of color sufficiently definite to impress the beholder at a glance. This type of woman, as a rule, keeps to a few colors, possibly one or two and their varieties, and prefers gowns of one material rather than combinations of materials. Though she possess both style and beauty, she elects to emphasize style. In the case of the other woman, who would star her face at the expense of her tout ensemble, color is her first consideration, multiplication of detail and intelligent expressing of herself in her mise en scène. Séduisant instead of chic is the word for this woman. Your black-haired woman with white skin and dark, brilliant eyes is the one who can best wear emerald green and other strong colors. The now fashionable mustard, sage green, and bright magentas are also the affair of this woman with bright skin, brilliant color, and sparkling eyes. These same colors, if subdued, are lovely on the middle-aged woman with black hair, quiet eyes, and pale complexion, but if her hair is gray or white, mustard or sage green are not for her, and the magenta must be the deep purplish sort, which combines with her violets and mauves, or delicate pinks and faded blues. She will be at her best in shades of gray which tone with her hair. End of chapter 3.
4 of Woman as Decoration. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Julie van Mollegem. Woman as Decoration by Emily Burbank. Chapter 4. The Psychology of Clothes. Has the reader ever observed the effect of clothes upon manners? It is amazing, and only proves how pathetically childlike human nature is. Put any woman into a Marie Antoinette costume, and see how during an evening she will gradually take on the mannerisms of that time. This very point was brought up recently in conversation with an artist, who, in referring to one of the most successful costume balls ever given in New York, the Crinoline Ball at the Old Astor House, spoke of how our unromantic Wall Street men fell to the spell of stocks, ruffled shirts, and knickerbockers, and as the evening advanced, were quite themselves in the minuet and polka, bowing low in solemn rigidity, leading their lady with high arched arm, grasping her pinched-in waist, and swinging her beruffled crinoline form in quite the 1860s manner. Some women, even girls of tender years, have a natural instinct for costuming themselves, so that they contribute in a decorative way to any setting which chance makes theirs. Watch children dressing up, and see how, among a large number, perhaps not more than one of them will have this gift for effects. It will be she who knows at a glance which of the available odds and ends she wants for herself, and with a sure, swift hand will wrap a bright shawl about her, tie a flaming bit of silk about her dark head, and with an assumed manner, born of her garb, cast a magic spell over the small band which she leads on, to that which, without her intense conviction and their susceptibility to her mental attitude towards the masquerade, could never be done. This illustrates the point you would make as to the effect of clothes upon psychology. The actor's costume affects the real actor's psychology as much or more than it does that of his audience. He is the man he has made himself appear. The writer had the experience of seeing a well-known opera singer, when a victim to a bad case of the grippe, leave her hotel voiceless, facing a matinee of Juliet. Arrived in a dressing-room at the opera, she proceeded to change into the costume for the first act. Under the spell of her role, that prima donna seemed literally to shed her malady with her ordinary garments, and to take on health and vitality with her Juliet robes. Even in the waltz song her voice did not betray her, and apparently no critic detected that she was indisposed. In speaking of periods in furniture, we said that their story was one of waves of types which repeated themselves, reflecting the ages in which they prevailed. With clothes we find it is the same thing. The scarlet and silver and gold of the early Jacobeans is followed by the drabs and greys of the Commonwealth. The marvellous colour of the Church, where beauty was enthroned, was stamped out by the iron will of Cromwell, who, in setting up his standard of revolt, wrapped soul and body of the new faith in penal shades. New England was conceived in this spirit, and as mind has affected the colour of the Puritans' clothes, so in turn the drab clothes, prescribed by their new creed, helped to remove colour from the New England mind and nature. But observe how, as prosperity follows privation, the mind expands, reaching out for what the changed psychology demands. It is the old story of Rome grown rich and gay in mood and dress. There were, of course, villains imbued in drab and Grecian white, but the child in every man takes symbol for fact. So it is that today some shudder with the belief that beauty, re-enthroned in all her gorgeous modern hues, means near disaster. The progressive claim that into the world has come a new hope, that beneath our lovely clothes of rainbow tints and within our homes, where beauty surely reigns, a new psychology is born to radiate colour from within. Our advice to the woman not born with closed sense is, employ experts until you acquire a mental picture of your possibilities and limitations, or buy, as you can afford to, good French models under expert supervision. You may never turn out to be an artist in the treatment of your appearance, instinctively knowing how a prevailing fashion in line and colour may be adapted to you, but you can be taught what your own type is, what your strong points are, your weak ones, and how, while accentuating the former, you may obliterate the latter. There are two types of women familiar to all of us. The one gains in vital charm and abandon of spirit from the consciousness that she is faultlessly gowned. The other succumbs to self-consciousness and is pitifully unable to extricate her mood from her material trappings. For the darling of the gods who walks through life on clouds, head up and spirit free, who knows she is perfectly turned out, and lets it go at that, we have only grateful applause. She it is who carries every occasion she graces, indoors, out of doors, at home, abroad. May her kind be multiplied. But to the other type, she who droops under her silks and gold tissue, whose pearls are chains indeed, you would throw out a lifeline. Submerged by clothes, the more she struggles to rise above them, the more her spirit flags. The case is this. The woman's mind is wrong. Her clothes are right, lovely as ever seen, her jewels gems, her house and car and dog the best. It is her mind that is wrong. It is turned in instead of out. Now this intense and soul, as well as line-destroying self-consciousness, may be prenatal, and it may result from the Puritan attitude toward beauty, that old New England point of view that the beautiful and the vicious are akin. Every young child needs to have cultivated a certain degree of self-reliance, to know that one's appearance is pleasing, to put it mildly, is of inestimable value when it comes to meeting the world. Every child, if normal, has its good points, hair, eyes, teeth, complexion or figure, and we all know that many a stage beauty has been built up on even two of these attributes. Star your good points. Clothes will help you. Be a winner in your own setting, but avoid the fatal error of damning your clothes by the spirit within you. The writer has in mind a woman of distinguished appearance, beauty, great wealth, few cares, wonderful clothes and jewels, palatial homes, and yet an envious unrest poisons her soul. She would look differently, be different, and has not the wisdom to shake off her fetters. Her perfect dressing helps this woman. You would not be conscious of her otherwise, but with the natural equipment, granted that she concentrated upon flashing her spirit instead of her wealth, she would be a leader in a fine sense. The beauty doctor can do much, but show us one who can put a gleam in the eye, tighten the grasp, teach one that ineffable grace which enables woman, young or old, to wear her clothes as if an integral part of herself. This quality belongs to the woman who knows, though she may not have thought it out, that clothes can make one a success, but not a success in the enduring sense. Dress is a tyrant if you take it as your god, but on the other hand, dress becomes a magician's wand when dominated by a clever brain. Gown yourself as beautifully as you can afford, but with judgment. What we do, and how we do it, is often seriously and strangely affected by what we have on. The writer has in mind a literary woman who says she can never talk business except in a line and colour. Mark Twain, in his last days, insisted that he wrote more easily in his nightshirt. Richard Wagner deliberately put on certain rich materials and colours, and hung his room with them when composing the music of The Ring. Chopin says in a letter to a friend, "After working at the piano all day, I find that nothing rests me so much as to get into the evening dress which I wear on formal occasions." In monarchies based on militarism, royal princes, as soon as they can walk, are put into military uniforms. It cultivates in them the desired military spirit. We all associate certain duties with certain costumes, and the extraordinary response to colour is familiar to all. We talk about feeling colour, and say that we can or cannot live in green, blue, violet, or red. It is well to follow this colour instinct in clothes as well as in furnishing. You will find you are at your best in the colours and lines most sympathetic to you. We know a woman who is an unusual beauty and has distinction, in fact is noted for her chic when in white, black, or in the combination. She once ventured a cerise hat and instantly dropped to the ranks of the commonplace. Fine eyes, hair, skin, teeth, colour, and carriage were still hers, but her effectiveness was lessened, as that of a pearl might be if set in a coral circle. End of chapter 4. Of Woman as Decoration. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Julie Vermillion. Woman as Decoration by Emily Burbank. Chapter 5. Establish habits of carriage which create good line. Woman's line is a result of her costume, in part only. Far more is woman's costume affected by her line. By this we mean the line she habitually falls into, the pose of torso, the line of her legs in action and when seated, her arms and hands in repose and gesture, the poise of her head. It is woman's line resulting from her habit of mind, and the control which her mind has over her body, a thing quite apart from the way God made her, and the expression her body would have had if left to itself, ungoverned by a mind stocked with observations, conventions, experience, and attitudes. We call this the physical expression of woman's personality. This personality molds her bodily lines, and, if properly directed, determines the character of the clothes she wears, determines also whether she be a decorative object, which says something in line and colour, or an undecorative object, which says nothing. Woman, to be decorative, should train the carriage of her body from childhood by wearing appropriate clothing for various daily roles. There is more in this than at first appears. The criticism by foreigners that Americans, both men and women, never appear really at home in evening clothes, that they look as if they felt dressed, is true of the average man and woman of our country, and results from the lax standards of a new and composite social structure. America as a whole lacks traditions and still embodies the pioneer spirit, equally characteristic of Australia and other offshoots from the Old World. The little American girl, who is brought up from babyhood to change for the evening, even though she have a nursery tea, and be allowed only a brief good-night visit to the grown-ups, is still the exception rather than the rule. A wee English maiden, we know, created a good deal of amused comment, because on several occasions, when passing rainy afternoons indoors with some affluent little New York friends, whose luxurious nurseries and marvellous mechanical toys were a delight, always insisted upon returning home, a block distant, to change into white before partaking of milk toast and jam at the nursery table, the American children keeping on their pink and blue linens of the afternoon. The fact of white or pink is unimportant, but our point is made when we have said that the mother of the American children constantly remarked on the unconscious grace of the English tot, whether in her white muslin and pink ribbons, her riding clothes, or accordion-plaited dancing frock. The English woman-child was acquiring decorative lines by wearing the correct costume for each occasion, as naturally as a bird wears its feathers. This is one way of obviating self-consciousness. The Eton boy masters his stick and topper in the same way when young, and so more easily passes through the formless stage conspicuous in the American youth. Call it technique, or call it efficiency. The object of our modern life is to excel, to be the best of our kind, and appropriate dress is a means to that end, for it helps to liberate the spirit. We of today make no claim to consistency or logic. Some of us wear too high heels, even with strictly tailored suits, which demand in the name of consistency a sensible shoe. Also, our sensible skirt may be far too narrow for comfort. But on the whole, women have made great strides in the matter of costuming, with a view to appropriateness and efficiency. End of chapter 5.
Chapter 6 of Woman as Decoration. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Leanne Howlett. Woman as Decoration by Emily Burbank. Chapter 6 Color in Woman's Costume. Color is the hallmark of our day, and woman decoratively costumed, and as decorator, will be largely responsible for recording this age as one of distinct importance, a transition period in decoration. Color is the most marked expression of the spirit of the times. Color in woman's clothes, color in house furnishing, color on the stage and in its setting, color in prose and verse. Speaking of color in verse, Rudyard Kipling says, we quote from an editorial in the Philadelphia Public Ledger, January 7, 1917. Several songs written by Tommy and the Poilus at the front celebrate the glories of camp life in such vivid colors they could not be reproduced in cold black leaden type. It is no mere chance, this use of vivid color. Man's psychology today craves it. A revolution is on. Did not the strong red, green, and blue of Napoleon's time follow the delicate sky blues, rose, and sunset yellows of the Louis? Color pulses on every side, strong, clean, clear rainbow color, as if our magicians of brush and dye pot held a prism to the sunbeam. Violet, orange and green, magentas and strong blue against backgrounds of black and cold gray. We had come to think of color as vice, and had grown so conservative in its use that it had all but disappeared from our persons, our homes, our gardens, our music, and our literature. More than this, from our point of view. The reaction was bound to come by reason of eternal precedent. Half-tones, antique effects, and general monotony, the material expression of complacent minds, has been cast aside, and the blasé man of 10 years ago is as keen as any child with his first linen picture-book, and for the same reason. Color, as we see it today, came out of the East via Persia. Bakst in Russia translated it into terms of art, and made the Ballet Russe an amazing, enthralling vision. Then Poiret, wizard among French couturiers, assisted by Bakst, adapted this Oriental color and line to woman's uses in private life. This supplemented the good work of La Gazette du Bon Ton of Paris, that effete fashion sheet devoted to the decoration of woman, whose staff included many of the most gifted French artists, masters of brush and pen. Always irregular, no issue of the Bon Ton has appeared of late. It is held up by the war. The men who made it so fascinating a guide to woman, who would be decorative, are at the front, painting scenery for the battlefield, literally that, making mock trees and rocks, grass and hedges and earth, to mislead the fire of the enemy, and doubtless the kindred Munich art has been diverted into similar channels. This Oriental color has made its way across Europe like some gorgeous bird of the tropics, and since the war has checked the output of Europe's factories, another channel has supplied the same wonderful colors in silks and gauze. They come to us by way of the Pacific, from China and from Japan. There is no escaping the color spell. Writers from the front tell us that it is as if the gods made sport with fate's anvil, for even the blackened dome of the war zone is lurid by night with sparks of purple, red, green, yellow, and blue, the flare of the world-destroying projectiles. The present costuming of woman, when she treats herself as decoration, owes much to the prophets of the New Theatre and their color scale. These men have demonstrated, in an unforgettable manner, the value of color, the dependence of every decorative object upon background, shown how fraught with meaning can be an uncompromising outline, and the suggestiveness of really significant detail. Bakst, Reinhardt, and Granville Barker have taught us the new color vocabulary. Gordon Craig was perhaps the first to show us the stage made suggestive by insisting on the importance of clever lighting to produce atmosphere and elimination of unessential objects, the argument of his school being that the too detailed reproducing of nature, on the stage, acts as a check to the imagination, whereas, by the judicious selection of harmonics, the imagination is stimulated to its utmost creative capacity. One detects this creed today in certain styles of home decoration, woman's background, as well as in woman's costumes. Portable backgrounds. The staging of a recent play showed more plainly than any words the importance of background. In one of the scenes, beautiful artistic gowns in delicate shades were set off by a room with wonderful green walls and woodwork, mignonette. Now, so long as the characters moved about the room, they were thrown into relief most charmingly, but the moment the women seated themselves on a very light-colored and characterless chintz sofa, they lost their decorative value. It was lacking in harmony and contrast. The two black sofa cushions intended possibly to serve as background, being small, instantly disappeared behind the seated women. A sofa of contrasting color or black would have looked better in the room, and served as immediate background for gowns. It might have been covered in dark chintz, a silk damask in one or several tones, or a solid color, since the gowns were of delicate indefinite shades. One of the sofas did have a dark Chinese coat thrown over the back, with the intent, no doubt, of serving as effective background, but the point seemed to escape the daintily gowned young woman who poured tea, for she failed to take advantage of it, occupying the opposite end of the sofa. A modern addition to a woman's toilet is a large square of chiffon, edged with narrow metal or crystal fringe, or a gold or silver flexible cord. This scarf is always in beguiling contrast to the costume, and when not being worn is thrown over the chair or end of sofa against which Our Lady reclines. To a certain degree this portable background makes a woman decorative when the wrong color on a chair might convert her lovely gown into an eyesore. One woman we know, who has an Empire room, admires the lines of her sofa as furniture, but feels it ineffective unless one reclines à la Madame Récamier. To obviate this difficulty, she has made a square, 1½ yards, of lovely soft mauve silk damask, lined with satin charmeuse of the same shade, and weighted by long, heavy tassels at the corners. This she throws over the Empire roll and a part of the seat, which are done in antique green velvet. Now the woman seated for conversation with arm and elbow resting on the head looks at ease, a part of the composition. The square of soft, lined silk serves at other times as a couvre-pied. End of Chapter 6. Recording by Leanne Howlett.
Of Woman as Decoration. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ellie. Woman as Decoration by Emily Burbank. Chapter 7. Footwear. Footwear points the costume. Every child should be taught this. Give most careful attention to your extremities, shoes, gloves, and hats. The genius of fashion's greatest artist counts for naught if his costume may not include hat, gloves, shoes. and we would add umbrella, parasol, stick, fan, jewels, in fact every detail. If you have the good sense to go to one who deservedly ranks as an authority on line and color in woman's costume, have also the wisdom to get from this man or woman not merely your raiment, go farther, and grasp as far as you are able the principles underlying his or her creations. Common sense tells one that there must be principles which underlie the planning of every hat and gown. Serious reasons why certain lines, colors, and details are employed. Principles have evolved and clarified themselves in the long journey which textiles, colors, and lines have made, traveling down through the ages. A great cathedral, a beautiful house, a perfect piece of furniture, a portrait by a master, sculpture which is an object of art, a costume proclaimed as a success, all are the results of knowing and following laws. The clever woman of slender means may rival her friends with munition incomes if only she will go to an expert with open mind, and through the thoughtful purchase of a complete costume, hat, gown, and all accessories, learn an artist modist's point of view. Then, and we will put it in italics, take seriously with conviction all his or her instructions as to the way to wear your clothes. Anyone can buy costumes, many can, perhaps own far more than you, but it is quite possible that no one can more surely be a picture, a delightful decorative object on every occasion than you, who knows instinctively or has been taught beyond all shadow of doubt how to put on and then how to sit or walk in your one tailored suit, your one tea gown, your one sport suit or ball gown. If you want to wear light spats, stop and think whether your heavy ankles will look more trim in boots with light, glove-fitted tops and black vamps. We have seen women with slender ankles and shapely insteps that white slippers or low shoes might be worn with black or colored stockings. But it is playing safe to have your stockings match your slippers or shoes. Buckles and bows on slippers and pumps can destroy the line of a shoe and hence a foot, or continue and accentuate line. There are fashions in buckles and bows, but unless you bend the fashion until it allows nature's work to appear at its best, it will destroy artistic intention. Some people buy footwear as they buy fruit. They may like what they see, so they get it. You know so many women, young and old, who do this, that our advice is try to recall those who don't. Yes, now you see what we aim at. The women you have in mind always continue the line of their gowns with their feet. You can see with your mind's eye how the slender black satin slippers, one of which always protrudes from the black evening gown, carry to its eloquent finish the line from a head through torso, hips to knee, and knee down through instep to toe. A line so frequently obstructed by senseless trimmings, lineless hats, and footwear wrong in color and line. If your gown is white and your object to create line, can you see how you defeat your purpose by wearing anything but white slippers or shoes? At a recent dinner, one of the young women who had sufficient good taste to wear an exquisite gown of silk and silver gauze, showing a pale magenta ground with silver roses, continued the color scheme of her designer with silver slippers, tapering as Cinderella's, but spoiled the picture she might have made by breaking her line and enlarging her ankles and instep with magenta stockings. This could have been provided by the use of silver stockings or magenta slipper with magenta stocking. When brocades in several colors are chosen for slippers, keep in mind that the ground of the silk must absolutely match your costume. It is not enough that the figure of brocade is the color of the dress, because so distorting the line, figured silks or colored brocades for footwear are seldom a wise choice. To those who cannot own a match in slippers to each gown, we would suggest that the number of colors used in gowns be but few. Getting the desired variety by varying shades of a color and then using slippers a trifle higher in shade than the general color selected. End of chapter 7. Recorded by Ellie, July 2009.
Chapter 8 of Woman as Decoration. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Leanne Howlett. Woman as Decoration by Emily Burbank. Chapter 8. Jewelry as Decoration. The use of jewelry as color and line has really nothing to do with its intrinsic worth. Just as when furnishing a house, one selects pictures for certain rooms with regard to their decorative quality alone, their color with relation to the color scheme of the room, the art of interior decoration, so jewels should be selected either to complete costumes or to give the keynote upon which a costume is built. A woman whose artist dressmaker turns out for her a marvelous green gown would far better carry out the color scheme with some semi-precious stones than insist upon wearing her priceless rubies. On the other hand, granted one owns rubies and they are becoming, then plan a gown entirely with reference to them, noting not merely the shade of their color, but the character of their setting, should it be distinctive. One of the most picturesque public events in Vienna each year is a bazaar held for the benefit of a charity under court patronage. To draw the crowds and induce them to give up their money, it has always been the custom to advertise widely that the ladies of the Austro-Hungarian court would conduct the sale of articles at the various booths, and that the said noble ladies would wear their family jewels. Also, that there be no danger of confusing the various celebrities, the names of those selling at each booth would be posted in plain lettering over it. Programs are sold, which also inform patrons as to the name and station of each lovely vendor of flowers and sweets. It is an extraordinary occasion, and well worth witnessing once. The jewels worn are as amazing and fascinating as is Hungarian music. There is a barbaric sumptuousness about them, an elemental quality conveyed by the Oriental combining of stones, which to the Western European and American seem incongruous. Enormous pearls, regular and irregular, are set together in company with huge sapphires, emeralds, rubies, and diamonds, cut in the antique way. Looking about, one feels in an Arabian Nights dream. On the particular occasion to which we refer, the most beautiful woman present was the Princess Metternich, and in her jewels, decorative as any woman ever seen. The women of the Austrian court, especially the Hungarian women, are notably beautiful and fascinating as well. It is the Magyar élan, that abandon which prompts a woman to toss her jeweled bangle to a gypsy leader of the orchestra when his violin moans and flashes out a czardas. But the rule remains the same whether your jewels are inherited and rich in souvenirs of European courts, or the last work of Cartier. They must be a harmonious part of a carefully designed costume, or used with discretion against a background of costumes planned with reference to making them count as the sole decoration. We recall a Spanish beauty, representative of several noble strains, who was an artist in the combining of her gems as to their class and color. Hers was that rare gift, infallible good taste, which led her to contribute an individual quality to her temporary possessions. She counted in Madrid, not only as a beautiful and brilliant woman, but as a decorative contribution to any room she entered. It was not uncommon to meet her at dinner, wearing some very chic blue gown, often of velvet, the sole decoration of which would be her sapphires, stones rare in themselves, famous for their color, their matching, the manner in which they were cut, and their setting, the unique handwork of some goldsmith of genius. It is impossible to forget her distinguished appearance as she entered the room in a princess gown, made to show the outline of her faultless figure, and cut very low. Against the background of her white neck and the simple lines of her blue gown, the sapphires became decoration with artistic restraint, though they gleamed from a coronet in her soft black hair, encircled her neck many times, and fell below her waist-line, clasped her arms, and were suspended from her ears in long, graceful pendants. They adorned her fingers, and they composed a girdle of indescribable beauty. Later, the same night, one would meet this woman at a ball, and discover that she had made a complete change of costume, and was as elegant as before, but now all in red, a gown of deep red velvet or some wonderful soft satin, unadorned save by her rubies, as numerous and as unique as her sapphires had been. There were other women in Madrid wearing wonderful jewels. One of them, when going to court functions, always had a carriage follow hers, in which were detectives. How strange this seems to Americans! But this particular woman in no way illustrated the point we would make, for she had lost control of her own lines, had no knowledge of line and color in costume, and when wearing her jewels, looked very much like the showcase of a jeweler's shop. Jewelry must be worn to make lines, continue or terminate lines, accentuate a good physical point, or hide a bad one. Remember that a jewel, like any other objet d'art, is an ornament, and unless it is ornamental, and an added attraction to the wearer, it is valueless in a decorative way. For this reason it is well to discover, by experimenting, what jewelry is your affair, what kind of rings, for example, are best suited to your kind of hands. It may be that small rings of delicate workmanship, set with colorless gems, will suit your hands, while your friend will look better in the larger, heavier sort, set with stones of deeper tones. This finding out what one can and cannot wear, from shoe leather to a feather in the hat, and the inventory includes even width of hem on a linen handkerchief, is by no means a frivolous, fruitless waste of time. It is a wise preparedness, which in the end saves time, vitality, and money. And if it does not make one independent of expert advice, and why should one expect to be that, since technique in any art should improve with practice, it certainly prepares one to grasp and make use of expert suggestions. We have often been told, and by those whose business it is to know such things, that the models created by great Paris dressmakers are not always flashes of genius which come in the night, nor the wilful perversion of an existing fashion to force the world of women into discarding and buying everything new. It may look suspiciously like it when we see a mere swing of the pendulum carrying the straight sheath out to the 10-yard limit of crinoline skirts. As a matter of fact, decorative woman rules the fashions, and if decorative woman makes up her mind to retain a line or a limit, she does it. The open secret is that every great Paris house has its chic clientele, which in returning from the Riviera, Europe's Peacock Alley, is full of knowledge as to how the last fashions, line and color, succeeded in scoring in the role designated. Those points found to be desirable, becoming, beautiful, comfortable, appropriate, séduisant, what you will, are taken as the foundation of the next wardrobe order, and with this inside information from women who know the subtle distinction between daring lines and colors which are good form and those which are not, the men or women who give their lives to creating costumes proceed to build. These are the fashions for the exclusive few this year, for the whole world the next year. In conclusion, to reduce one of the rules as to how jewels should be worn to its simplest form, never use imitation pearl trimming if you are wearing a necklace and other ornaments of real pearls. The pearl trimming may be very charming in itself, but it lessens the distinction of your real pearls. In the same way rhinestones may be decidedly decorative, but only a woman with an artist's instinct can use her diamonds at the same time. It can be done by keeping the rhinestones off the bodice. An artist can conceive and work out a perfect adjustment of what in the mind and hand of the inexperienced is not to be attempted. Your French dressmaker combines real and imitation laces in a fascinating manner. That same artist's instinct could trim a gown with emerald pastes and hang real gems of the same in the ears, using brooch and chain, but you would find the green glass garniture swept from the proximity of the gems and used in some telling manner to score as trimming, not to compete as jewels. We have seen the skirt of French gowns of black tulle or net, caught up with great rhinestone swans, and at the same time a diamond chain and diamond earrings worn. Nothing could have been more chic. We recall another case of the discreet combining of gems and paste. It was at the spring races, Longchamp, Paris. The decorative woman, we have never forgotten, had marvelous gold red hair, wore a costume of golden brown chiffon, a close toque to show her hair of brown, long topaz drops hung from her ears, set in hand-wrought Etruscan gold, and her shell lorgnette hung from a topaz chain. Now note that on her toque and her girdle were buckles made of topaz glass, obviously not real topaz, and because made to look like milliner's garniture and not jeweler's work, they had great style and were as beautiful of their kind as the real stones. End of Chapter 8. Recording by Leanne Howlett.
Nine of Woman as Decoration. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ruth Golding. Woman as Decoration by Emily Burbank. Chapter 9. Woman Decorative in Her Boudoir. By the way, do you know that boudoir originally meant pouting room, a place where the ceremonious grande dame of the Louis might relax and express a ruffled mood if she would, which only serves to prove that even the definition of words alter with fashion. For we imagine that our supinely relaxed modern beauty of the country club type has, on the whole, more self-control than she of the boudoir age. Since a boudoir is of all rooms the most personal, we take it for granted that its decoration is eloquent with the individuality and taste of its owner. Walls, floors, woodwork, upholstery, hangings, cushions, and objets d'art furnish the colour for my lady's background, and will naturally be a scheme calculated to set off her own particular type. Here we find woman easily made decorative in négligé or tea-gown, and it makes no difference whether fashion is for voluminous flowing robes, ruffled and covered with ribbons and lace, or the other extreme, those creations of Fortuny which cling to the form in long crinkled lines and shimmer like the skin of a snake. The Fortuny in question, son of the great Spanish painter, devotes his time to the designing of the most artistic and unique tea-gowns offered to modern woman. We first saw his work in 1910 at his Paris atelier. His gowns, then popular with French women, were made in Venice, where Monsieur Fortuny was at that time employing some 500 women to carry out his ideas as to the dyeing of thin silks, the making and colouring of beads used as garniture, and the stenciling of designs in gold, silver, or colour. The lines are Grecian, and a woman in her Fortuny tea-gown suggests a Tanagra figure, whether she goes in for the finely pleated sort, kept tightly twisted and coiled when not in use to preserve the distinguishing fine pleats, or one with smooth surface and stencilled designs. These Fortuny tea-gowns slip over the head with no opening but the neck, with its silk shirring cord, by means of which it can be made high or low at will. They come in black, gold, and the tones of old Venetian dyes. One could use a dozen of them and be a picture each time, in any setting, though for the epicure they are at their best when chosen with relation to a special background. The black Fortunys are extraordinarily chic, and look well when worn with long oriental earrings and neck chains of links or beads, which reach, at least one strand of them, half-way to the knees. The distinction which this long line of a chain or string of pearls gives to the figure of any woman is a point to dwell upon. Real pearls are desirable, even if one must begin with a short necklace, but where it can be afforded, woman cannot be urged too strongly to wear a string extending as near to and as much below the waistline as possible. A long string of pearls gives great elegance, whether the wearer is standing or seated. You can use your short string of pearls too, but whatever your figure is, if you are not a young girl, it will be improved by the long line, and if you would be decorative above everything, we insist that a long chain or string of less intrinsic value is preferable to one of meaningless length and priceless worth. Very young girls look best in short necklaces. Women whose throats are getting lined should take to jewelled dog collars in addition to their strings of pearls or diamond chains. The woman with firm throat and perfect neck was made for pearls. For those less blessed, there are lovely things too, jewels to match their eyes or to tone in with skin or hair, settings to carry out the line of profile, rings to illuminate the swift gesture or nestle into the soft, white, dimpled hand of inertia. Every type has its charm and followers, but we will say Avoid emphasizing your lack of certain points by wearing unsuitable costumes and accessories, and by so doing lose the chance of being decorative. Sybil Sanderson, the American prima donna, whose career was in Paris, was the most irresistibly lovely vision ever seen in a tea gown. She was past mistress at the art of making herself decorative, and the writer recalls her as she last saw her in a Doucet model of chiffon, one layer over another of flesh, palest pink and pinkish mauve that melted into the creamy tones of her perfect neck and arms. Sybil Sanderson was lovely as nature turned her out, but Paris taught her the value of that other beauty, the beauty which comes of art, and attained, like all art, only through conscious effort. An artistic appearance once meant letting nature have its way. It has come to mean nature directed and controlled by art. And while we do not resort to the artificiality, in this moment, of hoops, crinoline, pyramids of false hair, monstrous headdresses, laced waists, low neck and short sleeves for all hours and all seasons, paper-soled shoes in snowdrifts, etc., we do insist that woman be bien soignée. Hair, complexion, hands, feet, figure. Perfection partout. Woman's costumes, her jewels, and all accessories complete her decorative effect. But even in the age of powder and patches, hair oil and wigs, no more time nor greater care was given to her grooming. And what we say applies to the average woman of affairs, and not merely to the parasite type. End of chapter 9.
Woman as Decoration. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Woman as Decoration by Emily Burbank. Chapter 10. Woman Decorative in Her Sunroom. The sunroom, as the name implies, is a room planned to admit as much sun as is possible. An easy way to get the greatest amount of light and sun is to enclose a steam-heated porch with glass which may be removed at will. Sometimes part of a conservatory is turned into a sunroom, awnings, rugs, chairs, tables, couches, making it a fascinating lounge or breakfast room, useful, too, at the tea hour. Often when building a house, a room on the sunny side is given 1, 2, or 3 glass sides. To trick the senses, ferns and flowering plants, birds and fountains are used as decorations, suggesting out of doors. The woman who would add to the charm of her sunroom in winter by keeping up the illusion of summer, will wear summer clothes when in it, that is, the same gowns, hats, and footwear which she would select for a warm climate. To be exquisite, if you are young or youngish, well and active, you would naturally appear in the sunroom after 11 in some cheerful material of a delicate tint, made walking length, with any graceful summer hat which is becoming, and either harmonizes with color of gown or is an agreeable contrast to it. By graceful hat we mean a hat suggesting repose, not the close tailored hat of action. One woman we know always uses her last summer's muslins and wash silks, shoes, slippers, and hats in her sunroom during the winter. In her wardrobe there are invariably a lot of sheer muslins, voiles, and wash silks in white, mauve, grays, pinks, or delicate stripes, the outline following the fashion, voluminous, straight, or clinging, the bodice tight with trimmings inset or full, beruffled or kerchiefed. Her hats are always entirely black or entirely white, in type the variety we know of as picturesque, made very light in weight and with no thought of withstanding the elements. The woman who knows how can get the effect of a picture hat with very little outlay of money. It is a matter of line when on the head, that look of lightness and general airiness which gives one the feeling that the wearer has just blown in from the lawn. The artist's hand can place a few simple loops of ribbon on a hat and have success, while a stupid arrangement of costly feathers or flowers may result in failure. The effect of movement got by certain line manipulation, suggesting arrested motion, is of inestimable value, especially when your hat is one with any considerable width of brim. The hat with movement is like a free-hand sketch, a hat without movement like a decalcomania. If the owner of the sunroom is resting or invalided, then away with out-of-door costume. For her a tea gown and satin slippers are in order, as they would be under similar conditions on her furnished porch. If the mistress of the sunroom is young and athletic, one who never goes in for frou-frous, but wears linen skirts and blouses when pouring tea for her friends, let her be true to her type in the sunroom, but always emphasizing immaculate daintiness, rather than the ready-for-sport note. A sheer blouse and French heels on white pumps will transpose the plain linen skirt into the key of picturesque relaxation, the hallmark of sunrooms. More than any other room in the house, the sunroom is for drifting. One cannot imagine writing a check there, or going over one's monthly accounts. We assume that the color scheme in the sunroom was dictated by the owner and is therefore sympathetic to her. If this be true, we can go farther and assume that the delicate tones of her porch gowns and tea gowns will harmonize. If her sunroom is done in yellows and orange and greens, nothing will look better than cream white as a costume. If the walls, woodwork and furniture have been kept very light in tone, relying on the rugs and cushions and dark foliage of plants to give character, then a costume of sheer material in any one of the decided colors in the chintz cushions will be a welcome contribution to the decoration of the sunroom. Additional effect can be given a costume by the clever choice of color and line in a work bag. Chapter 11.